That's amazing. I love it. Today I am here with a very cool instrument. Now recently one of my followers on my YouTube channel actually requested that I do a video on one of these instruments, and I was going to postpone this video and put it off at a later date when I did even more work on this instrument, but since someone requested I do a video on a Fender Rhodes keyboard, today I have one and I thought I'd do a video on it. Now another thing I wanted to mention is some of you who have been following my channel for a little bit will remember some videos I did at a guy's house where I played on a Hammond chord organ, I played an Emini organ and a little baby Magnus toy organ, I also played a Kimball pump organ. He had lots of cool things, and there was even a Ace Tone rhythm generator there as well. And I actually got a comment on that video saying, you know, and asking whether or not I was simply going out to these Craigslist ads and just making videos and not purchasing anything, or if I was actually buying some of these things. And this Fender Rhodes was actually one of those things that guy had for sale, the same guy with the chord organ and the Kimball pump organ. And this was actually the most expensive thing he had for sale, and I actually ended up buying it, and this is it right here. And so whenever I go out to these Craigslist ads, I'm always looking to see whether or not these instruments can be used in the studio and whether or not they would get appreciated and used a lot in the studio. And sometimes it turns out that, no, I don't buy the instruments, but other times, in the case of this Rhodes, I bought this instrument. Now, if you're not familiar with the Fender Rhodes, I'm going to go through and take off the top and show you the inside and show you how it works, because it's absolutely wild, and it's completely different than any modern keyboard today. Many of you probably know that, and many of you probably know a lot about this instrument, but I thought I'd show it to you anyway. Now I have it here with the top on, and it's all closed up just because it looks kind of interesting like this. It's basically a table when the lid is on. And one question everyone has about these instruments is, how heavy are they? Because anyone who's ever tried to move one, and anyone who knows a little bit about them and knows that they're all just, it's basically just all metal inside of here, will know that they're very, very heavy. And this is actually one of the lighter models. For the full-size Rhodes, this is actually, I believe, the lightest model Rhodes that there is. It's the Stage model, which means it doesn't come with an amplifier, and these are the legs that you have, and if you wanted to play with an amp, you'd have to bring your own. And this is a 73 key. They also made an 88 key Stage model, which of course would be slightly heavier than this. They also made the suitcase model, which basically the keyboard would sit on top of an amp, and then would have these fold-out legs that would come in the front to keep the keyboard steady, and that, with the amp and everything, would of course be very heavy. They also made a 73 and an 88 key version of that as well. So the 88 key suitcase Rhodes would be the heaviest Rhodes model that ever existed. This one, of course, would be a bit on the lighter scale. It actually comes in at 127 pounds, which is very heavy. A modern keyboard would be heavy, but certainly nowhere near that. So now let's take off the top and show you what it looks like with the top missing. There's 4 latches here, and if I come over here and open these 2 as well, then this just lifts up like so. It's this piece alone is very heavy. And what's kind of cool is there's actually storage up here, and so underneath here there's like 3 buckles and you can pull out, and then inside of this little compartment, which I can open for you, inside of here is actually where the legs will go. So when you take the instrument apart, the legs as well as the rod for the pedal, which isn't on there at the moment, I'll get that in and show you as well. All these can go in here, as well as cables and anything else. This just, I think, hinges out somehow, like that. That hinges up, and then there's some kind of, I guess this is extra Tolex or something to cover it, or maybe it's a key cover. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But this is a compartment where the legs would go, and any other extra cables or accessories that you had could also fit in there. It's quite a nice design, and it takes up this empty space over the keys that otherwise would be completely wasted space, and it turns it into something useful, which I think is a very good design idea. Once I lock this one up, I'll get this off, and then I will show you what it looks like with it missing. This alone probably weighs like 20 pounds. There we go. So this is the Fender Rhodes keyboard. Now as you can see, the keys are a bit yellow, and also somebody in the past has put some stickers on there. I'm going to try to get those off because I don't need those stickers to be on there, but they were on there and they probably will be a bit annoying to get off. I tried to take a couple off and they just split in half and were annoying. But I didn't put those on, somebody else did, and I will take those off. Now over here we have our controls. We've got a bass boost and a volume knob, and then also our input. So that input would just go out to the amplifier, and we have a label that says Rhodes Mark I Stage Piano. There's also the Rhodes logo here in the middle. Now earlier models had a Fender Rhodes logo. It actually had the little diagonal Fender logo kind of here, and then the Rhodes font was smaller, and then underneath I believe it also said Makers of Fine Keyboard Instruments, just like that did. And then there's a 73 logo. It's honestly one of my favorite logos in the music industry. It's a really nice logo. And they did a similar logo on the 88 model as well as the piano base and other things like that. It's just a really nice look. And it's like its own piece of plastic that's put on there, and it's really nice. So this is what the keyboard looks like, and what's kind of cool is when you play it and it's not plugged in, you can kind of hear very faintly, you can hear the tines. I'm not sure if that's coming through on the audio or not, but you can hear that. And what's cool is if we take this lid off, you can see all of the internal workings. So I'm sure you're curious by now. Let's check this out. The cover on the Rhodes is very, very easy to take off. There's no screws or bolts involved. All you have to do is pick it up. And that is what the inside of the Fender Rhodes looks like. It's a very, very interesting thing, especially if you've never ever seen one before. It looks absolutely wild. Now, as you can see, it's basically, in a way, it's an acoustic instrument that is electrified, unlike a modern keyboard, which is completely digital, and there are no real vibrating sound-producing parts. Because when you hit a note, as you might be able to hear in there, there's actual tines that are being amplified by pickups, kind of like the strings on a guitar, and then the signal is sent out to an amp, and then you have the classic Rhodes sound. So there are actual acoustic parts in here, and if you look inside, you can see that it's basically a simplified piano. We have a tine, which would replace the string. We have a very simple damper, and we have a very simple hammer, as well as a hammer mechanism. So if I play some notes here, you can see all that moving. And it's very, very interesting. Now, in the future, I'm actually going to be making a video talking about various repairs that you can do and various repairs that we have done on this instrument. Because as you can see, there's a lot of little parts here, and while it's nowhere near as complicated as, say, a piano's action, there are various maintenance things that can be done. For example, this tine down here, as you can see, it's a kind of a gray color, and it's a different color than these. These ones here are gold, and this one here is that kind of gray color, and basically this, this tine here is kind of going bad, and eventually that will affect the sound, and eventually it will need to be replaced. At the moment, I'm not noticing any major sound difference. When I plug it in, I'll look for that and see if there is one, but at some point we will replace this tine, and we'll do a video on it. And we've also replaced some of the bridle straps that connect the backs of the hammers to the dampers and make them come off the strings, and the tines actually. As you can see, when I lift the hammer up, the damper will kind of come away from the tine and then make it stop vibrating. And there's a little cable that attaches the back of the hammer to this damper, and those can actually break and go bad. So we've replaced a few of those, and we'll do videos showing how to do that. It's actually very simple. And then there's also these pickups that can be moved and adjusted. The tines here have little springs on them that can be moved for tuning. I don't think there's any tuning issues with this instrument, but if a note was out of tune or you wanted to adjust the tuning, that's how you do it with these little springs here. And what I've actually heard is that you can get like 4 different notes out of one single tine with one of these springs, which is, I didn't know there was that much pitch variance with that spring, but if you move it all the way back, it makes the, I believe moving it up makes the pitch go up, and moving it down makes the pitch go down, which would make sense. And as you can see, there are the little springs at the end. And I think that's basically it on the inside of the instrument as far as the mechanics are concerned. Now there's a couple interesting things down here. There's a little stamp here that, as you can see, says 0675. Now what that means is that's basically the date stamp. And so that would mean that this instrument was made in June of 1975, and it's actually one of the first months that this instrument would have had the newer Rhodes logo, which would not include Fender's badge on there. It just says Rhodes, makers of fine keyboard instruments. Another interesting thing to mention is the little badge here that says Rhodes Keyboard Instruments, makers of fine keyboard instruments, once again, Fullerton, California, and then some patent information. There's a serial number and a model number, and as you can see, the model number there said Stage 73. Now, if you're looking to buy one of these instruments and you take a look at the inside and say it's a suitcase model, but you look on the inside and it actually says Stage, that would mean that at some point the keyboard was converted into a suitcase model, and the opposite can happen as well. A suitcase model can be converted into a stage piano, but the little logo on the inside here, the little badge, would not be replaced. So if you're interested in buying one of these instruments and you're doing some research for yourself, you'd want to look at that and just make sure that that makes sense with the instrument that you're buying. You can kind of get a little sneak peek of the keys in there, and as you can see, they look very much like an actual piano's keys. If you've ever looked at those before, you can see that they have bushings, and they're made of wood, just like a real piano's keys, and essentially the entire key, until you get to the very end, is basically a piano key. That's what it is. Now, about the knobs over here, as I said earlier, we have bass boost and volume, but we do not have vibrato, which is one of my favorite features on the Rhodes, and it's a very famous sound, and it was used in many popular records, but unfortunately this instrument does not have this. Now, when I get my final Rhodes, this is not my final Rhodes, this is kind of like the first one that I get to kind of practice and learn about the Rhodes and how to repair them and great stuff to do with them, but at some point I want to get an 88-key suitcase model, and when I do that it will come with vibro. And the cool thing about the vibro on the Stage models is that the amplifier at the bottom has 4 speakers, and when you activate the vibro it actually alternates between speakers, and it's a really cool feature, and it goes back and forth, and it's a really great sound. Okay, it's time to get it plugged in and see what it sounds like, but first I forgot that I had to connect the pedal, so I thought I would show you guys the pedal, talk about it a little bit, and then install it off camera, and then just show you when it's installed. I have the cover back on really quick because I forgot to talk about the pedal, and as I said, it makes a nice table, and so I thought I'd put the pedal up on here so you guys can see it better and I'd talk about it. Now, what's neat about this pedal to me is it's actually all metal. I think it's aluminum because it doesn't weigh that much, but it still has a really nice quality feel, and it's a very simple mechanism. I wish that modern keyboard pedals were maybe not made of metal, but at least made of a higher quality plastic, because some of the ones I see today, like the one that came with my personal keyboard, is honestly very unfortunately cheap. This one, of course, is not. As you can see, it's all metal underneath. It's a very simple design. It's just a lever that controls this rod that I'll show you in a minute. We have little rubber feet here, as well as a little pad so that when the pedal hits the floor it doesn't go tink, tink, tink and be really noisy. And it's a very simple design, but it's very high quality. There's some dust in here and stuff. I'll clean that out at some point. But it's a very high quality design, and it's very simple. Now, basically, there's a little pole here that the end of this rod sits on, and then there is an adjustment up here for this rod, which you can then put underneath the keyboard. It goes into the pedal, it extends, and you just set it into the spot under the keyboard, tighten it up like that, and then your pedal will be ready to use. Now, as you can see, there's some rust on here. It's nothing major, but there are some rusty spots on here, and at some point I will take some 4-0 steel wool to that and get that off because it would look much nicer. So I'm going to install this, and then I'll show you what it looks like, and then we will finally get this keyboard up and running with the amplifier. Okay. Just before we were setting up the camera to start playing it and plugging it in and stuff, I noticed some of the dampers are actually out of adjustment, and when I'd hit them, the note would still ring, so I had to go in there and make some adjustments to that. I'm still fine-tuning this instrument, and I'm still probably going to end up doing more damper adjustments and stuff, but it's a really cool instrument, and even though it's not perfect, the main reason it's not perfect is because nobody's really touched it in like 40 years or something like that. And also, the person who owned it before me probably wasn't a very advanced pianist, which is why, and this instrument didn't get played very much, which is why these little stickers were here on the keys. And which is actually good, though, that the instrument wasn't played very much, because no real changes were ever made to it. That's why when I got it, some of the bridle straps were broken and I had to fix it. And but it's very, very cool. It's working good. Again, the instrument is not in perfect condition, and there's some minor things that need to be tweaked. But again, this is like a 40-year-old instrument, and I don't think anybody's done anything to it for a very long time. And now it's time that I come along and start fixing it up and making it really good again. Now, the Rhodes is a very, very cool instrument, and there's other keyboards that can emulate the sound of a Rhodes very similarly. One of my favorites is the Korg SV1. The Rhodes sound on it is very close. I think I'm actually going to do a comparison video between the Korg SV1 Rhodes sound and a real Fender Rhodes in the future. I think that video will be very cool. And of course, I love my SV1 because it can do many things that the Rhodes cannot, like other sounds. But the Rhodes simply is unlike anything else on the planet. How else could you make a sound like rain sound like this? So it's a very, very cool sound, and if you're familiar with older music, you'll probably recognize what that is from. Now, I'm going to play a few things on here, and one of the things I'm going to play on it is a very odd song. It's really not meant to be played on the Rhodes, but I'm actually working on learning that other piece that I just gave you a sneak peek on, and at some point I'll do a video on that in the future. But for now, I'm actually going to play, of all things, a Bach piece on the Rhodes, because why not? piece was originally written for an organ, and I'm sure it's a bit weird to play it on the Rhodes, but it actually kind of gives a good idea of what the Rhodes sound like. It's a very clean, pure sound, and one of the coolest things about it is the bass. That song didn't really demonstrate the bass very much, but I'm going to play a little bit in the bass now for you. It's such a really, really cool sound, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's a sound unlike really any other instrument in the world. Now, another thing I'm going to play on it, just to kind of demonstrate the treble and the delicacy that this instrument can have. It has the cool gravelly bass, but it can also have a really delicate bell-like treble. And so I thought I would play the Davy Jones theme from the Pirates of the Caribbean on this instrument, because it actually works pretty well on the Rhodes instrument. It works on so many other instruments as well. It's pretty wild. I know that was a bit of an odd musical selection to play on a Fender Rhodes of all things, but I think that honestly they did a pretty good job of demoing the instrument. You can really hear the clear treble up here. It's the thing that really makes the Rhodes a Rhodes, especially in combination with that growly bass. Now I plan on doing all kinds of awesome things with the instrument, as well as fine-tuning a little bit. I think this note could use a little bit of adjustment. Maybe not though. I think I might have just hit it not quite as hard as it was supposed to, so that's why one of those notes in Pirates didn't exactly sound. I didn't hit it quite as hard as I should have. And it's a very, very cool instrument, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like I said, one of my followers actually suggested that I do a video on a Rhodes, and since I had one, I thought I would come through and do a video. So hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully the rest of you enjoyed as well, and I've got lots of videos on my channel on acoustic pianos and organs and keyboards and all kinds of cool things like that. So if you want to go check out those videos, you can do that, and if you want to subscribe, thank you very much. You might want to stay in tune for all of the cool things I'm going to be doing with this and all my other awesome instruments in the future. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. I love that sound. It's so much cooler than the SV1 because there's so much detail in it. Like you can hear all the little imperfections of the sound as well. The way like some of the notes aren't quite in perfect tune with each other, so it kind of has like a natural vibrato to it. I'm trying to find one that does it. I was playing one earlier that really had it. I can't find one now, but there was one up here that really had. But it's just, it sounds so much more full and more detailed and better than the Rhodes sound in the SV1. Yeah, that bass is so cool. Adjustment still. That's amazing. I love it. Moving this thing it's heavy and it's very hard to move, but we've made it easier with this dolly that we have down here. It's a special dolly move for using pianos, but it's also works for this as well, and it makes it very easy to just move around.